Welcome to It's All Mental, a podcast from Every Turn Mental Health. Mental isn't a bad word. There's no health without mental health. We're here to talk about every high and low, no limits, just good conversation. Hi everybody and welcome to today's episode of It's All Mental. I'm Emily Evans, Every Turn's Chief Commercial Officer, and today I'm joined by Paul Johnson from Nuffield Health. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Emily. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really good today. Thank you very much. So today's episode is filmed ahead of Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme for this year's Mental Health Awareness Week is moving more for mental health. So we're going to be having a conversation all around the link between mental health, physical health, exercise, which is something I'm really looking forward to. I'm particularly passionate about this. I love exercising, and it's very much for my mental health as much as it is for my physical health as well. So really looking forward to the conversation today. Paul, thank you for joining us. If we can just start with you introducing yourself, a bit about your role within Nuffield Health and what Nuffield Health does, that would be lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you in regard to exercising for mental health. Just got back from my walk this morning, actually, because I was feeling a tad anxious about this. So knocked down a cobweb. So it's great. So my role is Clinical Fitness National Lead for Nuffield Health. Prior to that, I still do dual role as a rehab specialist as well. So it's one of the beautiful benefits of my role is that I still get to deliver the services that I represent. Prior to that, I was one of our fitness managers, so I ran a team of personal trainers and rehab specialists at one of our fitness and wellbeing centres. And prior to that, and still really at heart, I'm very much a personal trainer and have been probably for about the last decade. In that time, I've probably worked with, acquired close to 10,000 hours of experience working one-to-one with people. And probably hundreds of hours delivering group exercise as well. So that's my role. And I guess to kind of explain what I do exactly, it would be prudent to explain a bit more about Nuffield. So Nuffield are the UK's largest healthcare charity, with our purpose being to build a healthier nation. And we believe that, to provide the best possible preventative healthcare, it's important that we look at basically the whole of you. So the mind and the body. And as a result, our connected health offering spans from, sort of secondary care hospital services right through to mental health support, to GP services, physiotherapy, health assessments, physiotherapy, physiology, and personal training. So we offer a whole suite right from secondary care right through to personal training and gym floor. And what we're great at is I guess bringing those services together really well. And one of the things that we do is we'll leverage our expert clinicians and start designing really evidence-based, robust exercise interventions for people living with long-term conditions. Then we leverage our expert personal trainers and our fitness professionals to deliver those services, and we upskill them to become rehab specialists. The services that I refer to are free of charge to our local communities and will support people with things like chronic pain conditions, long COVID symptoms. And basically where I fit in is kind of in that space between sort of clinical and fitness, hence Clinical Fitness National Lead. And I basically support, I guess, those services through quality assurance. So just supporting the workforce to deliver those services as intended, and also providing professional leadership for our rehab specialists as well.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to hear about all of Nuffield services and your role in particular, Paul. And I guess you must have a lot of experience then of seeing people who have got that require some support with things to do with their physical health, whether they're injured or other things to do with their physical health, but also, like you said, how that also can support them emotionally as well. So that's interesting. We've actually been having some conversations with Nuffield at Every Turn to think about how we can integrate some of your great charity programs into our existing services and how we could offer those, particularly some of the charitable programs around joint pain to some of the people that we see through Every Turn services. So that's really exciting. We're hoping to be able to share more on that soon. In terms of your personal experience then of supporting people, what impact have you seen personally through either, your work as a personal trainer or your kind of rehab role around that link between movement and physical activity, and people's mental health? What have you seen?
Yeah, there's so many examples, and I kind of obviously touched on my own example at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I'm no different to everybody else. There's been occasions in life where I've had a testing period, and I found solace through exercise, and it seems to apply that way for a lot of people. I guess more recently, working with people with chronic pain conditions through our joint pain program. Naturally, when people are in chronic pain, it can really affect their emotional well-being. It can also, I guess, remove their sense of identity, because people suddenly can't do what they used to be able to do. And naturally, they feel like a bit of a burden, which, isn't the case, but that's how they feel. And
Mm.
often will isolate themselves as well. So just with our joint pain program alone, what we tend to see is people will sort of almost grey cloud into the room, um, feel like that they probably shouldn't be there, that we can't help them, that they can't help themselves. And even just over the course of 12 weeks, sort of sitting in that room, sort of creating a bit of community around them, providing educational support around how to manage their pain and their emotional well-being. Obviously, getting them moving, getting them exercising, and just the transformation that you see in people's mental health and mood during that period alone, it's been profound. It really has. Um, and that's just that population. But even working one-to-one with clients over the years, um, again, there's so many things that come with exercise. So if we are suffering low mood, just getting out and doing a bit of exercise, your body will release things like endorphins, which make you feel amazing. So that alone can lift your mood. You've got neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which will also make you feel amazing as well. So just the action of exercise can have a huge impact. And I think that's partly what we're seeing at the moment, to be honest, Emily, is
Mm.
if people aren't moving enough. And I think this is potentially compounding some, existing, sort of low mood and mental health, well-being issues that they may have. I mean, we recently just published our latest Healthier Nation Index findings.
Mhm.
So that's a survey that we do each year. It's probably one of the most comprehensive reviews and barometers for sort of overall health and well-being in the UK. And we found in that 74%, so pretty much three quarters of people aren't reaching the NHS recommended physical activity guidelines at moderate intensity, which is 150 minutes per week. And
Mhm.
only a third of people have actually designated a bit of time to do sort of vigorous intensity exercise in the last year. So it's no surprise that I think 28% told us that their mental health has gotten worse in the last year. So we are seeing a definite link there, I think, between a lack of movement and maybe sort of mental health being on the increase a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? The stats that you said there, and I guess it's a real indicator of what is just common lifestyle for people now,
Yeah.
and I guess the way that we work, the way that jobs operate, and a lot of time in front of a computer, sat down, being sedentary. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite shocking statistics, but I think probably just a representation of kind of modern lifestyle. What would you
Yeah.
say to people who, are in that 74% who, who are not getting the recommended exercise, not experiencing the benefits that you've spoken about of exercise for their emotional health as much as their physical health? Have you got any tips for people who, know that they want to be doing some more exercise, want to be moving more, but are struggling to find ways to do it? Because I think, there's lots of different types of exercise, isn't there? Like, you just said about going for a walk this morning. I did the same. But for some people, exercise itself, being in a gym environment, some of the things that people think about, it can be quite intimidating for some people. So have you got tips for people who would like to be moving more, but I'm not quite sure how to get started?
Yeah, I do. I've got a few actually, and it's funny because I think also in the Healthy Nation Index, 53% of people said that they lack motivation. It's one of the biggest barriers to exercise. And motivation is an interesting one. I had a conversation about this recently with a friend, and I think, and I've been guilty of this, sometimes people assume that motivation will just suddenly appear out of thin air. And one day you're suddenly going to feel motivated and you get up and you go exercise, and that's not really the case, let's be honest. Where motivation tends to come from, I find, is through seeing positive impacts on your actions. So we started a campaign, which is My Daily Movement, which is basically just to get people in the UK to commit to some sort of movement. Because what you tend to find is once you actually start moving a little bit and you start feeling the benefits, that's where the motivation comes from. So sometimes you've just got to start very small, and do very basic stuff and get moving. And then the motivation will come in to keep you doing more, keep you consistent, and that will compound over time. I said a while back as well that sort of movement is a net positive, and what I really mean by that is, despite how low your energy levels might be feeling, the energy that you use to get up and move, you'll get more energy in return of that movement. So it's kind of a net positive. So you almost don't lose energy through moving, you gain energy through moving.
Yeah, I completely resonate with that. I think sometimes when like life feels quite difficult, or like you are feeling particularly busy or particularly stressed, sometimes actually moving, exercising can feel like some of the hardest things to do to motivate yourself. But actually, if you can push through that a little bit and just do something, getting out into fresh air, going for a little walk, it's I've personally always 100% of the time found that I felt better for it. Even though it's like when you're in those moments where it feels difficult and busy, and personally my mood is not great, it can feel like the hardest thing to do, but 100% of the time it makes me feel better for it.
Yeah, it really does. And I think the other thing as well that you kind of touched on a second ago when you asked the question was you kind of referred to the gym space a bit. And I think that's worth touching on as well, because the recommendations from the government that obviously we champion, as I'm sure you guys do as well, it's around physical activity. It's not exercise. And although exercise is a type of physical activity, I think there's a difference, and I think people are still a little bit unclear on what the difference is, especially moderate and vigorous intensity. So I think, if we just take it back to basics with physical activity, we're not talking about getting in the gym, which is a big scary environment, even for a big brave PT like me, let alone anybody else. But, we're talking about just, getting off your bum and walking a little bit. Maybe taking, the stairs instead of the lift if you're able to. So it's not necessarily about, sort of going in at the deep end and, signing up to a gym membership, getting a PT. Although those things are great if you're comfortable with that and you can. But that's just focus on the little bits first. And I think, if we think about, I guess, setting sort of goals, right? So we always think about outcome goals. So I want to run a marathon. That's a big old ask of yourself, isn't it? But we can also set behavioral goals as well. So it doesn't have to be an outcome driven goal. It could be a behavioral goal, and it can be a very sort of small, short-term thing. So it might be that every day I'm going to have a screen break at 10 o'clock. I'm going to get outside regardless of the weather, and I'm going to walk around the block. And by doing that and kind of doing that each day, you start building habits and healthy routines. You then start getting a bit motivated, like we've already talked about, because now you're actually, when I go for that walk, I feel quite good and I feel re-energized. And when I come back to my screen, I can do more. And then once you sort of, building that as a habit and that behavior, then you could go, right, now actually what I'm going to do is, I don't know, for me, maybe do, 10 press ups 3 times a week. And you'll do that. And then you achieve that. And suddenly you start creating these behaviors, which over time will kind of lead you down the road to an outcome. So it's really sometimes to think about just setting, we talk about SMART objectives, right? So make it specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time frames. We harp on about this all the time in this fitness industry, but that can just be a very specific behavior that you want to try and do for a period of time. Then if you then decide you want to set an outcome goal, those behaviors will eventually compound and lead you to that. So I think that's something that people should really be mindful of. It's not just about going to the gym, lifting weights, doing scary stuff. It is just about movement, just walking a little bit more. And that could be 5 minutes, that could be half an hour, whatever people can manage. If it's a 1% better than it was yesterday, then it's a positive, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's just keeping it really simple, isn't it? And like you said, for some people, that's as simple as doing a couple of press ups or going for a 5 minute walk around the block. For some people, that might be something which is, a bit more intense or a specific type of sport, but it's trying to make it accessible and simple. And I'm really interested in that point around habits and habit forming, and how when you can create those small things and they become habits, how much easier that becomes. I'm really interested personally around attaching habits to habits, and how,
Yeah.
the things that are within your day already that you already do, how that you do, and it's just part of your everyday life, how just attaching another positive thing to that can help it become, easier and less of a big thing to do. I know I've heard some people talk about if they have a coffee in the morning just while the kettle's boiling or the espresso is coming through, just doing a couple of squats or a couple of press ups during that time. And I think, again, it's those little tips that are really useful, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things that I really love as well. One of my colleagues came up with it, but we already joked about hybrid working and that we're both sat here on our screens at home with distractions, and just linking it obviously, of course, back to mental health. I think one of the things that we've lost with today's way of working is obviously is the commute. And when we had to do the commute, it was an absolute pain. It was, we had to go places, it took time, and we've kind of moved away from that for a lot of people. So a lot of people now are doing hybrid working from home, which again has its benefits. It really does. It's great, and I love that flexibility. But what I tend to find is my home life, my personal time, kind of, and my work time, it kind of just bleeds together, and sometimes you don't see that sort of bookend to it, that start and the finish. And one thing that I find as well is when you're busy and you're jumping from one thing to another, you never really have any kind of pit stops in the day. You don't have any kind of mindfulness. And I've always been a bit of a reflector. I used to get accused of being a daydreamer as a child all the time. But I need time to process ideas. I need time to process my worries and my anxieties. And if I don't, it can really kind of build up over time and make me feel quite anxious.
Mm.
Also, will affect things like my sleep, which will obviously have an impact on my mental state as well. So one thing that I like is the fake commute. And this is where you get up in the morning, you go about your business, you do your morning routine, and then before you actually switch the computer on, get out the door and then go for a commute. And that could be 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you want, on a bike, on foot. And you basically just start the day with some fresh air and some daylight, which again is amazing for our mental health. You then come back, you do your work. Hopefully in the day you will have pit stops and you will take breaks. And then at the end of the day, you then go back out the door and you get out for a walk, and you're getting in your physical activity. So we're working towards that, the dream of 150 minutes, so 30 minutes a day over 5 days, or 21 minutes a day across the week. So we're probably achieving that now. So a long-term health risk is going to be it's going to be lowered. But what we're also doing is getting that mindfulness time, which I don't think people appreciate, because they're always on their phones, they're always distracted. There's never any time just to be and sit. And I think people used to do that without realizing on their commutes. They'd be in the car, you can't be on your phone, so you'd be sat in your car in traffic, just pondering the day, just working out your problems, working out your anxieties, coming up with solutions. And we've lost that. And I think that fake commute can give you that back in some degree, in some degree.
I love that. I'm definitely stealing that one, the fake commute. That's really, yeah, it's a really great tip. And again, I think you're so right there in terms of that time to reflect and process. And I'm sitting in my home now, work from home a fair bit, and yeah, that makes complete sense, because I think it's so easy to do your work, finish the day, you go back into family life. I've got two small children, so that can very quickly, you're just straight back into that, and actually that doesn't give any time to process the day and reflect on those things. Again, it's so easy, isn't it, with mobile phones, to just get straight on your phone, and again, that just doesn't give you that time. So I love that tip, to have a little fake commute in between, well, before starting the day and then at the end of the day. That's really
Yeah,
useful.
honestly, I think it's great. And I think another thing to touch on as well, and again, just thinking about screens and how we communicate, and the fact that we're kind of isolated in our work. Now, we are obviously here having a conversation right now, but if I was sat in your room face to face with
Mm-hmm.
you, kind of, sort of seeing your body language, feeling the energy, it's different, isn't it? It's not the same. We're not built to communicate in this way. And despite the fact that we feel like we're in regular contact with people, I think there's something missing there. And I think actually getting around people is really important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people do get low mood and they're not feeling very confident, they often will socially isolate. Um, and again, that can just compound like other sort of fears and feelings and everything else. So if you can do that commute or some physical activity with someone else, well, that's even better. So I think if you can exercise with other people, then I think that is amazing as well, because it's so important that we still get in the company of other people. Um, and some of the best conversations I have are while I'm out walking, because like I said, that's when some of my best thinking happens, because I'm not distracted by everything around me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, sort of losing myself in nature and the outdoors. And even if you're in a city, I've got the fortunate, I'm fortunate I've got a park nearby. I know everybody doesn't have that, but even just looking up, looking down the road and not looking, sort of a foot away, will really get my brain working. And I think if you're in the company of other people, that's great as well, because you start building a social component to that. Equally, going back to, I guess, a bit of confidence as well. If you are, I guess, not very confident, and that's maybe why you're feeling, your mental health is suffering, then by building in these habits that we touched on and a bit of routine, and kind of reassuring yourself that you can do what you say you're going to do, then that will support with that. If you feel a bit self-conscious, a bit getting out, going out with a friend or a family member, so you've got a bit of company, can obviously support in that confidence as well, until you feel confident in yourself to do it alone. So I think
Yeah.
that's another big benefit of potentially, getting out for that sort of that. Well, just walking, but doing it with other people is massive as well.
That's such a good point. And you touched on it earlier. I was going to ask you more about it, and you've just summarised that perfectly, because you spoke about community when you were talking about the joint
Mm,
pain program that's at Nuffield, and how actually, part of that program, it sounds like, is around the physical activity and the things that people are doing within that program.
mm,
But you were also saying that a big part of that is that community that's built within the group that are on the program, and that also has benefits.
yeah.
And again, I think doing that exercise, coming together, building that sense of
Yeah.
community and connection with people is so powerful for mental health as
Mm,
well, and can
mm.
make a huge amount of difference to people who are feeling isolated or have got a sense of loneliness as
Yeah.
well. And
No,
if you've got any,
absolutely.
you mentioned a couple of tips there in terms of asking a friend or a family member, but have you got any other tips for people who think, actually, that sounds just what I need, but are kind of, not sure anywhere that you would signpost people towards, or anything in particular that you'd recommend for people to access that kind of community side of movement as well?
Yeah, so yeah, we should touch on that some more, because it is a big factor, I think. And we did talk obviously just then about friends and family, but we also mentioned previously about how people can feel like a burden. So they
Mm,
might not want to ask their friends and family to take them for a walk. So there are lots of opportunities, obviously, depending on, if they are living with a long-term condition, then, we obviously have some options within that field. So definitely check out our website. But we do see that within our joint pain program is that sense of community is amazing. And you can gain that, I think, just by meeting new and like-minded people. So whether it's one of our pain conditions, one of our pain programs, sorry, or a local walking or running club. I mentioned offline that I do martial arts. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've done that for many years, and that's definitely pulled me through some dark periods in my life, and largely because I'm around like-minded people. I'm around, sort of people that have similar interests, often have similar problems, because everybody does, and that really can kind of uplift me. And what I find as well is when you're around people and you're talking just about absolute rubbish, about nothing in particular, it gives you it's almost like a holiday from your head, isn't it? Because suddenly you're not alone with your thoughts, you're not pondering the things that are creating anxieties and worries. You're now just chatting away and having a bit of banter or whatever the conversation is, and that's amazing. And more so as well, I think we see this really a lot with the joint pain program, where you have people walk in and they've been so isolated, and they've got this feeling of nobody gets it, nobody understands what I'm going through. And I certainly don't, as the person delivering the program. I learn from textbooks, but they live in their bodies, they understand their pain. And they walk into a room and suddenly they're sat around people that have got similar concerns. They get it, they understand. And that, I think, what bonds people a lot. But I mean, there's been multiple occasions where one of the participants may be having a bad day, um, and suddenly you just see how the rest of the group rally around them just to give them a bit of comfort and pull them through it, and they come back the next session and they're okay, and that's what community gives people. It's massive if you can find it.
So powerful, totally. And again, I completely resonate with a lot of what you're saying there. I go running with a friend who lives in our village. She's also a mum, and we've got our kids are in the same year at school. And it's great to get outside. We both love running and love the benefits that we get from that. But really, more than anything else, it's having those conversations with somebody who gets it, understands the challenges of being a parent. And yeah, it's about so much more, isn't it, than just the exercise itself or the movement that you're doing. It's about the conversation, and that can be hugely beneficial for
Yeah.
emotional well-being.
Yeah, and one thing that I say to people listening to this as well is the idea, especially if you've been isolated because you're not feeling particularly great about yourself, the idea of stepping into a room of people, or a park full of people or whatever it is absolutely terrifying. But I can promise those people that the hardest bit about that is just that first session, just walking in there, and you'll be greeted with such a warm welcome that you'll look back and wonder what you ever worried about. And then as the weeks go on, you'll feel absolutely comfortable. And the hardest bit is sometimes about just just getting in that space with people. And what you often find as well is those people that were in that place become some of the best mentors and ambassadors for what you do. And we see it again a lot with joint pain, where I know, again, with jiu-jitsu as well, in my personal life, but you see people that come in terrified, and they get through that challenge, that adversity, and then they want to share that with people and want to reassure people that actually it's going to be fine. And once you kind of get comfortable, it can really change your kind of outlook and your perspective. And I find that when people have been through that, it makes them so much kinder to people that are going through it. And that's, again, part of the community, I think.
Yeah, totally. There's a personal trainer who I used to know who always used to say the hardest part is getting changed.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you were just saying there. Sometimes the hardest bit is just getting yourself changed, getting yourself there. And it, like you said, it can feel very daunting, but actually if you can get it there, then huge benefits on the other side. Thank you so much, Paul, for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really interesting. You've given some great tips and advice already. Just to close off, is there any other places that you would encourage people to look at? Signposts, you've mentioned obviously Nuffield's website and the information on there. Is there anything else that you'd recommend just for people to check out, just to finish up?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course we've got a ton of stuff on our social media, so on Instagram and YouTube. So I think it's just all / Nuffield Health. So check us out there for some resources. Follow our sort of daily movement campaign, and just commit to moving a little bit more. On the back of our recent Healthier Nation Index, we've created a movement knowledge hub as well, which has hundreds of articles regarding the explaining what exercise is, what physical activity is, the link between that and mental health, and the benefits that you can receive as a result. That is nuffieldhealth.com / Healthier Nation. So check us out there, and there'll be a ton of resources. Also, our YouTube channel is amazing and full of great content as well. In addition to that, just look around the local community. There's amazing groups and charities out there, whether it's a running group, a martial arts club. But yeah, just get yourself moving and keep moving, and you'll feel the difference, I promise.
Wonderful. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul. I know everyone listening is going to find all of that really useful. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to It's All Mental, a podcast from Every Turn Mental Health. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to follow, rate and share. See you next time.